Welcome to The Most Important Thing. I'm Danielle DeMarco Neufeld,
And I'm Greg Neufeld.
and together we're exploring how high-performing families build culture at home.
Join us as we distill meaty topics into digestible, actionable experiments that we can all try with our families.
Because, after all, family is the most important thing. Hi, Greg.
Hey, hey.
So, today we are here to break down family stories,
All right.
why they're important, and how to weave them into our daily lives. Are you ready to dig in?
I sure am. This is not a topic I've heard much about at all, so I'm especially excited about this one.
Cool. Okay. So, the study of family storytelling as a foundation for child and adolescent well-being began gaining traction in the early 2000s. In 2001, psychologists Marshall Duke and Robin Feibush at Emory University developed the quote, "Do you know" scale, a 20-question measure that assesses how much children know about their family's history. It includes questions like, do you know how your parents met? And do you know the source of your name? Their research found a striking correlation. Children who knew more family stories had higher self-esteem, stronger sense of control, lower anxiety, and greater family cohesion. Further, they were better able to handle the stress of traumatic events. As Duke explained, children who have the most self-confidence have what we call an intergenerational self. They know they belong to something bigger than themselves. And as his colleague Robin Feibush puts it, these children have a stronger sense of, we've been through this before, and we can get through it again. So, I am convinced that sharing family stories builds emotional strength, purpose, and identity within a family. And I'd like to make this our second experiment. What do you think?
Sounds like I need to work on my storytelling.
Yeah, well, it's a lot easier than you think.
Okay.
So, in thinking about the way to distill this large body of research down, I worked with ChatGPT and came up with a mnemonic for cultivating this strong intergenerational self within our nuclear family. The mnemonic is STORY,
All right.
STORY. So let's start with the S, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. Share struggles, not just successes. Tell stories about real challenges that our family or you individually have faced and how you got through them. Because when kids hear these types of stories, it builds resilience by hearing we've been through the hard things and came out okay.
I love that. Is it specifically stories about us? Does it matter?
It really doesn't matter. It's one of the things I looked into as well. It can be shared family stories. It can be individual family stories. The point is less in the facts and the details and more in the way that you tell them and just the act of telling it themselves. It's a good reminder to me, and I'm glad that it's the first one, because I do think that the struggles are what have given my life meaning. I didn't get into the college I wanted to get into. I got rejected from the first half dozen jobs that I applied to my senior year of college. And those were two of the best things that ever happened to me.
Did you have any framework for overcoming adversity by way of story from your family? Did your parents talk about this a lot?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think both of my parents made meaningful strides from their families of origin in really economic security more than anything, and became quite a success for, I think that they would both say that they were successful beyond their wildest dreams, truthfully. And so this idea that you can do it absolutely permeated my family growing up.
Did they name it?
It's interesting. I think that it was a lot about successes. And mom and dad, if you're listening, it's totally okay. And, I do think that I probably could have heard more about the struggles and how persevering through the struggles led them to those successes and equipped them with the tools that, when preparation meets opportunity,
Hmm.
right? So I think about life a lot that way. And I think that that is a framework that I have developed kind of through my own personal journey as opposed to through my family. What about you?
Well, I think that is correct. The last part that you just said, that you've had firsthand experience and now you're ready to share that firsthand experience with our family. And you've shared a lot of that with me. I didn't grow up with these stories about family overcoming adversity. I grew up with stories about maybe what different activities represent in our family. So I would say that my parents met playing tennis was a story that was woven through my childhood about how important tennis is to my family. But I don't think that there was a lesson there.
I see. So the meaning, not just what happened, but what the happenings taught them was not necessarily
Yeah.
spoken about.
I see this a lot in friends that are generational wealth families,
Hmm.
where there's a historian, a family historian that can go back through the generations and talk about where they came from. It's very much like Sonia Morgan.
I think all families have that. Like, I definitely am thinking of a family member that can do that. And we are not a generational wealth family, my
Hmm.
family of origin.
Well, this seems like a big opportunity, and we just are scratching the surface with the fact that sharing is important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you say that about the tennis because, like, the thing that I think about is that my parents both they met teaching school, and the immediate next sentence that I think about is my dad had 2 sweaters when they met. And it's this
Yes.
idea of, no fashion sense, which he has today, but also really having not much money at all.
Yes.
Okay, so the S, share struggles, not just successes.
Yes.
T, two-way street. Let your kids ask questions, retell the story in their own words, or even challenge your version. And this is because when kids engage with a story, it becomes part of their identity, not just a history lesson.
I can see that. I can see that being important, especially when they talk about it as they get older.
Mm,
Because learning something when you're 5 or 7 or 3 and talking about it over and over and over reinforces that story, and then more details get added. And I think that this human mirror
mm,
will be really uh, self aware of what struggles mean if they are able to tell that story that we shared with them, as opposed
hmm
to just a one time sit down where they're not internalizing it.
for sure. I think it's really about making the story part of your journey as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm laughing to myself a little bit because I was downstairs earlier doing this research and talking to myself out loud. And Hunter, our oldest daughter, was sitting next to me. And as I was reading some of the questions, she said, I know the answer to these questions. I know, I can tell you. And I said, okay, what? She said, you and daddy met on the dance floor. And I was like, that's great, Hunter. I'm glad that you knew that. And the lady's name was Jade. And that's why my sister's name is Jade.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So,
We've done some of this with our songwriting and poems and storytelling, but I don't think that we've talked too much about our family's adversity. So, back to point one, that's where the work is to be done.
for sure. No, but you mentioned a great point that it doesn't necessarily, and this is just me talking, not the literature, but it doesn't necessarily, I don't think, have to be story. It could be song.
Mm-hmm.
It could be cheer, right? It could be sayings. Greg knows that I have quite a few mantras, if you will, which is probably another episode. But I'll just say that one of my favorite stories these days is the quote by Bill Belichick that is, Talent sets the floor, character sets the ceiling, because we have a lot of very talented individuals in our home. And sometimes that means that they think that's enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so two-way street. Just make it a conversation. It's not someone standing on their soapbox and the proverbial uncle at Thanksgiving saying the same story that's 20 minutes long every year. Though I think those are probably valuable as well. But in the context of our nuclear family, I think this two-way street is important. So S, share struggles and successes. T, two-way street. O, often not perfect. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Sneak in stories while folding laundry, driving, or eating meals together. The best tip I heard was waiting in line. Lately, we've been playing Heads Up Kids, which is a great app on my phone. That's kind of like charades, I guess. Lots of fun. But we spend a decent amount of time these days waiting in line, waiting for a boat ride here, waiting at an amusement park there. And I think that why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Why not? Hey, quick question.
Mm-hmm.
What's the delta here between stories that are ours and just stories? Meaning, how much more important do you think it is that the story is one of ours? Because Bill Belichick's character sets the floor, talent sets the ceiling, has become a saying in this family.
Well, I think that's a story that our kids will tell, that's what mommy always said.
Right.
I think that this idea of a family reminiscing about the shared past has positive outcomes.
Fair.
Yeah.
And is uniquely theirs. It's passed down.
Because what we're talking about here, the outcomes that we're talking about here are this strengthening of connection and this connection to an intergenerational self that even if I have not gotten through things like this before, my family has, right?
Yeah.
And I know people that have. I deeply know people that have. So I do think that the telling of personal stories is very important. You bring up a good question, though, just as an aside, around one of the things that you spend a lot of time doing these days, which is listening to Founders Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's kind of where I was going.
Yeah. And those people that David Senra talks so eloquently about and so enthusiastically about are not part of your family.
Nope. But they are mentors and teachers from the beyond, if you will.
Yeah. So do you think that they have contributed to your sense of identity?
Yes. And at the expense of not having many of my own family stories that I reflect on. So, in a way, it's an easier substitute.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think that any family is going to have the answer for everything. Like, you're an entrepreneur. And though some members of your family were entrepreneurial, they may not have shared those stories with you, but it is something that you are actively looking for meaning in.
Yeah. Founders is church for entrepreneurs. And I see a lot of the story in all religions being major contributors to what we're talking about here, which is creating a sense of identity and shared meaning, even if the story was not in their direct blood lineage. At some point, it ties back to that group of people. And so perhaps there's an opportunity for you and me to go through photos, come up with a good group of stories that we can present into our family over time, but also learn from other families and bring together stories from other families that, can personify, I think the important thing is you need to know that person, right? So if it's your parents, our kids know them. If it's your great grandparents, there's some connection there. If it's the neighbors and it's Hunter's best friend and that happened to her family, she'd probably get a lot of that same substance out of it.
I think so. I mean, you're saying that you do from people that you've never met, who
Exactly.
David Senra has never met,
Right.
that you're talking about, that many of whom are not even alive today. I'm thinking about a conversation that we had this week with our friend Sunil,
Mm-hmm.
who mentioned that one of the things that they try to do as a family is go to other families in their community when they are celebrating like special holidays, such as Passover Seders. I think that so there's a couple different types of stories that are talked about in the research. One is more of an individual story, but others are stories to recollect that the family all did together. So that time that this is me now growing up, went to Hanukkah at my friend's house with my parents, I still to this day can recite the Hebrew prayer that they sing when lighting the menorah,
Wow.
as you know. So obviously that left a lasting impression on me. We went to Korea Garden for dinner, all of the families, and the daughter of the family sang it over and over and over again, and I learned it. And I still know it to this day. So it's a bit of an aside. However, I think it's very true that we can make important and lasting stories as a family.
Mm-hmm. And if they're important to us, don't they become part of us? And then we share those stories with our kids and they're part of the family?
Absolutely. That's the point. But I think going back to the often not perfect. So sneak in stories whenever you can. They don't have to be these long diatribes. Is that the
Mm-hmm.
word? Diatribes? But it matters because repetition in everyday moments builds emotional connection and identity over time. So it kind of brings up this idea that you mentioned of church and how you might be learning similar lessons week after week, but it's the repetition that builds that connection.
Great.
Okay. So S, share struggles, not just successes. T, two-way street. O, often, not perfect. R, reveal meaning. This is a really important one and one that I think that I could easily get tripped up over. Don't stop at what happened. Share what the happenings taught you. Because kids grow when they hear how real life moments shaped your own personal values, beliefs, or decisions.
Yeah, the thing that I'm working on personally is the why it matters when formulating a point either here or at work, and thinking of that ahead of the sentence that I'm about to say.
Mm.
I think that that's an important takeaway for everything that we do with our kids, and especially on this topic, because we might not have unpacked what the meaning was for us.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I would just say a word of caution to us both that we want to make sure that these stories are stories that we currently feel comfortable with, that we maybe are not triggered by, and that are developmentally appropriate.
For sure.
Yeah. So S, share struggles, not just successes. T, two-way street. O, often, not perfect. R, reveal meaning. And then Y, your story continues ours. So remind our kids that they are a living chapter in our family's unfolding story. This is what fosters the intergenerational self, a deeper sense of belonging, identity, and continuity. I think that's a really important message that I'm not sure that I think it's been a gap in the way that I talk to our children as far as your story continuing our legacy.
Yeah, I was not. Um, I was not brought up where that was a factor.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's a bad thing. It's just it wasn't. It was more like go your own way, be your own person. You're special. Not
Interesting.
not like you are one of us, and you will continue this lineage long after we are gone.
Very 90s.
Very 90s.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's, you feel free to pressure test this idea. I do think that I see with our oldest daughter, Hunter, who's 7 now, when I ask her to be a noble Neufeld, which is one of the descriptions in our acrostic poem Cheer, the N in Neufeld is for noble. She knows what that means, that it means that I do have high expectations of you as far as the way that you should encounter the world. And that I think is a bit part of our legacy.
Yes,
But I think we could do more.
we will.
Yeah.
We're doing a
That's
lot, and
that's what the experiment is
we're
about.
doing a lot, and I'm excited to do the work here.
Okay, so before we get to how we're going to work this into our daily lives, I just want to provide one more quote from Robin Firebush, which is, "Please remember that it is not the knowledge of the specific facts that is important. It is the process of families sharing stories about their lives that is important."
Okay.
Great. So how are we going to make this actionable? Now that I've shared with you the acronym for story, and I'll say it one more time while you're thinking. S, share struggles and successes. T, two-way street. O, often, not perfect. R, reveal meaning. And Y, your story continues ours.
I wish I had somebody to go and ask some of the questions that I'm going to get tripped up on.
Say more.
Part of this is an opportunity to reconnect with family that we, you, me, may not spend time with, who have the answers to some of the questions that I'm sure you've done some research on that are effective in teasing out stories.
Sure, there's 20.
No way.
At least.
No way.
Link in the show notes.
It's a growth opportunity to
Yeah.
re-engage family around this. There's a intergenerational piece that when the knowledge isn't there, when the knowledge base isn't there, in me, I need to be able to go to someone and ask.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, because I do think you know the answer to a lot of the questions from the standpoint of sharing them with our children. Like making sure that Hunter, Jade, and Maverick know how your parents met, where their mother grew up, where their father grew up. But maybe you don't know the answers, and this is an opportunity for us to connect with extended family to learn the answers for ourselves.
Yeah. I think it's worth noting. So my parents both passed away when I was in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And the tough thing about that is it was just rounding the corner of the time in our lives when we had opportunities to sit down as peers and talk about things that were, from their perspective, maybe not shareable or fully appropriate or even just comfortable for them to talk about. When I was 18 or 16 or 15, I didn't live near home in my 20s. And so I feel like I missed an opportunity to actually get the adult responses to a lot of these questions. I think I have the kid responses.
Interesting. Well, the research is talking about children and adolescents. So I guess I would ask you then, do you feel like you have a strong sense of intergenerational self?
No, I don't feel that way.
Hmm.
But this is the reparenting part that is very healing, typically.
Mm-hmm.
Like having a family meeting, having a family mission statement, values, family cheer, all of this creates a new identity, even for me, about the family that I am the patriarch of, which is quite a beautiful thing. And also sometimes I feel like I missed out on a lot of those things. But I guess that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, I'm nodding my head a lot. Okay. So, as far as an actionable experiment is concerned,
Mm-hmm.
I think we should run parallel processes on this one, which is one, take a look at this list, see which questions we think we would want to answer, and work them into short conversations with our children
Yeah.
over the coming weeks. No stress, no drama.
And we'll put these in the show notes, but they're questions like, how did your parents meet? Where did your mother and father grow up? Where did your grandparents grow up? Where were your parents married? Etc. It's a lot of, I would say, just family origin stories questions, but then it goes into some of the lessons that your parents learned from experiences, jobs that your parents had. So we'll post this. I think these are great questions, and just being able to share some of these with our kids should be both illuminating as well as question inducing.
Mm-hmm. And as I understand it, an important aspect of these questions is that they are intentionally open ended. Because again, the facts are not the important thing, it's the telling of the stories and it's the richness of the storytelling itself that is what creates this sense of identity and connection. So just talk
Yeah.
is what I'm hearing. But so as far going back to the parallel processes, so I think that one track is talking to our children about these things and inviting them to share their feedback on it and encouraging them to be a part of the story. And then two, also exploring these questions for ourselves. The ones that we feel called to address, called to think about, called to speak to others about, and see how those land for us.
I've got a big bin of family photos right over there that I'm looking at that I feel like will be very helpful in answering these questions, or at least bringing back some of the memories that are worth sharing.
So, would you be open to committing some time this month to taking a look through these questions, taking a look through those photo albums, and seeing what comes up for you?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I'll do the same. My parents are both alive, so I commit to having at least one conversation with one of them about some of these questions.
Sounds good.
Okay, great.
Great. Anything else here?
How does this feel to you as a second experiment after our first of family meetings?
It feels like a great experiment. It's a little softer, and so this is a tough question then. What's the most important thing about family stories?
Telling them.
There we go.
It's not a hard question.
Okay.
It's telling them often, and
And
telling them
having
honestly.
and having the kids engaged, telling it in their own words. Or
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more time because I like my mnemonic.
We got story. S, share struggles and successes.
T, make it a two-way street.
O, do it often, not perfect.
R, reveal meaning.
And Y, your story continues ours.
Boom.
Boom. We will share our experimental results with you, and we hope that you will do the same.
Indeed, it's really an exploration.
Exploration.
I love you, Goosey.
I love you, Goosey.